Very slow computer. Hi, everybody. Today we have myself, Tantra Mott, with allergies in New Mexico. We have Liz Geyer and Dr. Deb Merchant. I asked to start the conversation this morning because we started this opportunity for people a while back. Maybe it's a couple of years now. I don't even remember, to be honest about it. But what I do know is that it came out of the work we do in the field of Tantra Mott. And what's really important to know about that is that often in the reality we were born into, we would hear the field of Tantra Mott is about a person named Tantra Mott. I mean, aren't there gurus and gods and different domains that that we identify with through a personality matrix? But personalities for human beings are actually pretty early on in the development of a human being. In fact, in tribal days, people didn't have an individual personality. So an individual personality is actually quite unique. But what I want to presence today is CreateAWorld is actually inside of the actuality of the framework of the field of Tantra Mott today on purpose, because it has very distinct values that are based in the Tantra, which is the unity of heaven and earth, the cosmos and the planet. It has to do with the principles of Mott, which is harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, grace, and beauty. So in the work we just recently did in the Your Magician of Self, and it's taken us 7 months of being in this work to actually have the strength, stamina, capacity to take something on called the human persona. And so we did a body of work with this beautiful template that Liz got made for us and the son of one of our participants. And it's about who we are. I am that, and where I am that is. So we have the I am that. I am sick, I am happy, I am a mother, I am a worker bee, I am a something, I am a thing. But we don't have I am that and where I am that is, because the minute you say I am that and where I am that is, you can't say that where you are is necessarily a personality matrix. It's more like a living field, or what many names for this. God, in the work of Tantra Mott, the field of creation, that means my work. In Joe's work, what is it in the cosmos? What is it in Joe's work? I can't remember. He calls it the quantum field. So there's all sorts of names for this great living whole of which we're a part. So in the work of the field of Tantra Mott, when you get to the I am that and where I am that is, it's more who you are as a living field, who you are as a living being. It's not a personality structure, and it's not a secular assignment in the worldview of the present reality that we've been born into. So when you're in a field phenomenon, it is not people-centric. So people, for me, people have always thought about me as I'm not interested in people. I'm only interested in the quantum field or God or whatever mystics are supposed to be part of. But no, because I see every human being as a quantum field, as a generating, organizing design of creation, as a field being a field, as a source-based being, as a magician of self. So what governs field phenomenon that is distinct from trying to manage human beings, or even relate to human beings as stick figures on a playing field, on a playing board? In this particular work, in the field of Tantra Mat, what governs the field, what influences people's experiential states is affinity, transparency, vulnerability, intimacy. Did I say transparency? And transparency, which I may have said twice. So the attention is on sustaining and maintaining affinity, intimacy, vulnerability, and transparency. It's not on the thingness. So therefore, if you're a participant, if you're engaged in the field of Tantra Mat, where I am, affinity, transparency, vulnerability, and intimacy is, and where I am, that is also. So the sustainable force is these ethers, not human circumstance. So when I'm just going to stop the recording because I wanted to capture that on my computer. So when three of us are on this call, when it all started with, I watched a video and Joe was talking about that it was time now for the physicalness of a human being to remember itself right. In the work we do in the field of Tantra Mat, the focused work for me is on the human personality, so it can remember itself as a magical being, not as a traumatized being. So when I watched that video, I knew I needed his new source work. The source video, I think it's called the source film.org. You can watch it, rent it. When I watched that, he was talking about the quantum field. The quantum field operates in gamma. And I couldn't resist going. And so I literally signed up that day. And then Dr. Deb and I were in a conversation. And what I want you to know about Dr. Deb, who's Deb Merchant to me, my mama, really, is I was once a very out-of-body being. I was a trans channel. I did not live in a secular relationship with anybody, not my children, not my animals, not my land, not people. I was the gift it gave me is I do have the ability to know what a field being a field is, because you see people beyond their human personality and beyond their human history at this lifetime. But one day, Deb met me many years before, quite unwillingly, and remembered a past life where she'd let me down. And she walked out the door that day to the curb. She made it to the curb, I think. Is that right, Deb? And you have to have your mic open.
You have two stories collapsed, but it's close enough.
Okay. But at that day, she walked to the curb. Well, I haven't finished the second part of the story, so
okay.
I'm just stereoing. She walked to the curb and walked back and knew that she would commit herself to my being whole this lifetime. Now, when we think of wholeness, we think of psychological wholeness for the most part, or physical wholeness. But what she committed to was the wholeness of a self that had no place here. And I was already, as a trance medium and as a psychic and as a seer, I was also committed to human beings remembering themselves right at a DNA level, at a molecular cellular level. Because when you remember yourself right, you aren't traumatized anymore. When you remember yourself right, it's like a hiccup or a stub toe. It's not like a life event that colors your life and makes you feel broken most of the time. And yes, part of the field phenomenon of a whole system response or a whole system being is affinity, vulnerability, intimacy, and transparency. In other words, we're safe with each other. So when this happened and Deb and I were talking, I have never had a way to thank Deb and her husband, Russ, who met me before her, for the thousands of years of service in the timeless time of the eternal, and in the temporal, well over half their lives, to dedicating it to me so that I could find a place here and I could get my job done. So Deb's been through a fairly serious heart event and several years ago, and her coming back has been slow. But what she and I both know, because we've been moving in this for a long time together now, what we both know is that the greater whole of which we are part can simply shift the very nature of our physiology. But there hadn't been a physiological event that could do it using the human being as the source of their own awakening at a cellular vibrational frequency and new personality level. And while there are gurus that definitely take on human beings and source human beings being whole, there wasn't anything out there at the physiological level that was sourcing something, sourcing where we could source our own wholeness. And in the field of Tantra, we have, in the work that people do in the Magician of Self, we're not working on the meta body. The meta body is the present body we have and what goes beyond that, that is still our body. So we have from time to time, I have from time to time aligned with other cultures of interest because it feeds the greater field, that what we call field collectives, other field natures, field work, like a regular field work, like an archaeologist, like it's like meeting with other archaeologists to have a greater understanding of what's buried underneath the soil, basically, and how to dig it up and identify it right. And so the minute I saw that video, I knew that I wanted Deb to go, and I gifted her the event because finally I had something that was equal to what she'd given me. A true reciprocity. You can listen to that on my Out Past the Edge. And then Sarah and Liz and Diane, three others, they also were called to do the event. They were all, so five of us in a working field, the field of Tantra, a collective, a field collective of people paying attention to what grants life and has us exist as whole. What has us be able to pay attention where everything's part of everything else, everything operates on behalf of everything else, everything's in a relationship with everything else, and everything has its place, and everything's always moving to the next greater whole in affinity, transparency, authenticity, intimacy, and vulnerability. So when all of us are watching almost 24 hours of videos, because we have to do the first two courses, the entry course, and we have to do the progressive retreat, which is 4 days. Entry course was a weekend. The second course is 4 days, and then the course we'll be in is a retreat 7 days. So we're literally in the midst of the technology that Joe builds. I'm so proud of him because I am his elder. I'm so proud that he insists that we get tested if we've done the modules too, that we do the first two courses first. So when we get to the retreat, we're already altered. We're already embodying the possibility that he presents, which is we get to know ourselves newly. And in knowing ourselves newly, and we get to have an emotional relationship with life that actually gives us a sense of self that is not available in all the trauma recovery and trauma states of being that we've been part of. So it's a real hand to glove in the field of Tantra Mat. It also means that because in template 4, in the creation templates, it's what do we hold to be real? So that's the purpose of re-languaging what we hold to be real, because what we hold to be real has been the source of anguish, the source of lack of vitality, the source of a diminishment of self. So we're in template 3, actually. Template 3 and template 4, major. who we hold ourselves to be, what's the nature of our being when it's not traumatized, when it's not lost in separation stories. So we're in the thick of it. And this morning when we got on, and we're in the thick of it with each other. We're not just in the thick of it with ourselves. We're in the thick of it in the template of ourselves, others, and life. And I'm just really thrilled because we've spent years in training. 2014, it started with me, and years in training. So for us, and I'm speaking for you all, and you all can correct me when it's your turn. But for us, this is like going to the Olympics after we've trained.
Yes.
This is like we get a chance at the Olympics. We get a chance to take everything that we've been experiencing, everything we've been learning, everything we've been operating on behalf of, particularly that, everything that we've been in relationship with that really matters to us, particularly that. And every ounce of us, klutzy, there's no present human language that holds what it's like to be in an intraactive. And an interactive means that we're part of the greater whole actively. We have interactive, like what's happening between people, but we aren't yet matured in interactive, intra-related, intradependent. So we're floundering around in the present culture of language, but we're also know at the same time the both and, not the either or. We also know in the both and that we're in something that we are working through, not only on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of ourselves, others, and life. But it starts with, I am that. So we all have to become our that, so that where we are, our that is. And this fit at like an impeccable moment in time with the work we're doing with the present group of people and your magician of self. So that's how I wanted to start it. So I just want to be clear that this is not promoting or presencing another human being and our admiration of them and the world they're creating. This is our world we're creating on behalf of ourselves, others, and life. And so the whole conversation of observation and sharing is going to come from that. And I just want that to be perfectly clear this morning. So over to the two of you.
Liz, you want to start or shall I? Okay.
Go ahead.
One of the things that drew me to Joe's work, Joe Dispenza, besides Tantra's recommendation, was that he doesn't make it about himself at all. He is 100% clear, and I mean 100% clear that he's activating our own power. Something, and he considers this to be normal for humans. He's aware this is not normal according to the system we were born into, to have capacities to, what's the word I want? Illuminate and eliminate what's held us back. But even that's a kind of flat way to say it. For me, so there's three pieces. When I started listening to sourcethefilm.org, and the science, I love the science. I do not need science to prove something spiritual is real. I love the science. It's like playing in a sandbox when the science validates something spiritual. It's just so much fun for me. And he has ferociously gone after the science. And my system is Christian, Jesus. Not really Christian. Christian gets in the way of a lot of stuff sometimes. But Jesus said, your faith will make you whole. He never said I'll heal you. No, he didn't. Not once. Your faith has made you whole. And other things. So that's one correlation for me. The other is between the work Tantra presences and engages. And Tantra is really the same way. Her work, is like what moves through her to get to us, and then it's up to us to latch on and become equal to that. Not up to us in the way of like sink or swim, but between Tantra's work, the work of the field of Tantramat, and this Joe Dispenza's work, human identity is finally becoming unredacted. It's finally becoming what is actually originally normal for human beings. And that excites me. And one of the things that I used to talk about when I would tell people what's identity and all that, I would say, well, your identity is made of even like the light of where you were born, how the sunshine, what it was like, or whether you had fireflies in July, or it wasn't just this event, that event, this event, that event. It was all the things that are sentient and maybe not necessarily mentally registered. And that includes the responses to traumatic stress, but it also includes how you responded to Auntie Sue about such and such, or felt about getting or not getting your bicycle, or I mean, it's so much more than how it's represented in popular culture. But how I spoke it was so inadequate to what they go after, the Tantra and Joe, from different vantage points. And it has a physical correlate. All of it has, you can't be a human being where your identity's over here somewhere and your physical body's over there somewhere, and never the twain shall meet at all. You can't. It is not possible. But that's what humanity's waking up into now. And what that actually means. I'm not separate from this computer. I'm not separate from the bush out there. But I'm also very, that hasn't been part of my everyday experience. So I'm relearning it also. I wasn't raised in an indigenous way. So there's a lot that was lost. And that's being reawakened and re-accessed, re-tapped, so that what doesn't serve has to leave. And sometimes that's not fun. That hasn't been fun sometimes, but sometimes it's astonishingly wonderful. And just, I think I'll stop there. There's a lot more to say, but that's a starting point for this conversation. I'll turn it over to you, Liz.
Hey, Deb, can we do a commercial break and explain the creatures behind you?
My daughter, my daughter, and then I have to read something I saw
Megan.
from her. My daughter, Megan, has taught herself to crochet, and she loves to make these creatures. And right now, here's one. She loves, right now, she's really into making little ghosts. So the ghost it's the same shape, but she does ghosts wearing costumes. And here's the zombie. This is a ghost wearing its zombie costume. And I made her give this to me. I told her I would steal it if she did. So there's its little brains and its little this is the ghost wearing a zombie costume. And she has quite a spread. And it just makes her happy. it just makes her happy. And then one of the things she did was uh when she ends up, then she asks after she tests other people's patterns. That's a way to network in the crochet world and build your skills. So she ended up with this gigantic pile of crocheted beings, and she boxed them up and sent them to a place where they'd had a school shooting. She just boxed them up. And then this one, let me find it really fast because I went on Facebook one day to look at something I think Victoria had posted. And I hope I can find it. And I saw a post from her that surprised me. And I got so excited that this was my girl and I did something right. She posted a quote from somebody. I am not a liberal snowflake. My feelings are not fragile. My heart is not bleeding. I am a badass believer in human rights. My toughness is up in tenderness. My strength is in the service of others. There is nothing more fierce than a formidable, unconditional love. There is not a thing more courageous than compassion. But if my belief in equity, empathy, goodness, and love indeed makes me or people like me snowflakes, then you should know winter is coming. And that's my girl.
And
So those,
the reason I wanted Deb to share this is that we're not a philosophical group of people that are sitting in our
ivory
messed up,
tower.
happy hour, thank you, and messed up lives. Not that our lives are messed up, I might add, according to some people. But we really, the whole point of establishing a living field is that others in the field rise inside their own nature of being. It isn't a teaching, it's an environment. And
Yeah.
Joe talks about environment. And that's why we're doing 24 hours of meditations and retreats before we put our butts on the chair there,
Yep.
because he wants us to be in the environment and not operating in antithesis with it. And he talks about that just like what I talk about,
Yep.
that we suck the life out of a living field with our upsets and our traumas and our a justification for our feelings that are against life and against ourselves and against others. And he talks about that. There's a shift that happened in the field of Tantra Mat actually during the spirals of being. And then I left them free to do their own WhatsApp, and it kept building independent of me, which is great. My only promise was 7 years, and I gave that. And it started to build. It built what we call a coherent field where everything is in the unity points of existence, where the field is fed. And in feeding the field, we are cared for. It's the Old Testament, feed the olive tree and you'll have olives. Over to you, Liz.
Yeah, I really picked up on intra-dependent because that's the work that I do in the field of Tantra Mat. I got where I am, threads of existence are woven to create new threads of amplified existence, vibrancy of being whole and whole in self. And that's mainly why I'm going because when I saw Source, I'm getting chills. When I saw the movie, I was like you, Deb. I was all over the science, and I could really see how the science and how the whole entire field of Joe Dispenza's work really uh, is part of the work we are about in the field of Tantra Mat, and especially with the creation templates. Um, it just because as I'm becoming more and more immersed in the work of Joe, it's and writing the creation templates at the same time, it's amplified. And I'm very passionate about all of us being intra-dependent, meaning looking to self for for our guidance and finding the magnificence inside of us of who we are. And that's what his work is about. In and he chips away at that brilliantly. And I have to go back to the science. The science just thrills me. And how he's medically going in and looking at people, um, you know, before they take these courses, during and after, to further explore and deepen the work of, you know, becoming whole. Um, and so I know from years of training with Tantra and other bodies of work that as soon as you sign up, that's when the work begins. And so, boy, it's we were talking earlier about volcanoes, and I can really feel the lava underneath, in underneath us, that it's bubbling. Um, this work, uh, with the five of us and with the field of Tantra, because I can feel it already, it's expanding out, in ways that, we've yet to explore, or discover, but I can feel it, it's bubbling out. Um, and so, I mean, it's a very, very exciting time to be immersed in this work together. So I don't know if anybody was pinged. Uh,
Yeah,
I'll
I
turn it over
was.
to you. Yeah.
Yep. Part of what, part of the power in what Liz said in the field of Tantra Mat is developing the uh, cognitive capacity and awareness that this is what's occurring, or how quickly you can move into what's going on, what's going on. Oh, that, connect with somebody to get yourself aware. Because if you were just in the regular world where the news articles come from, for example, it would just be feeding the same system that we have going on right now, and that all of these things are the truth. And excuse me, there'd be no awareness of the attachment to um, different ways of being, different stories that are not actually life enhancing. They're just, and no forward movement of your own life or that of others around you. So the conscious capacity is a really important feature, and really appreciated. There's actually strength and power there.
It's also what's fascinating about Joe. In my work, in You're a Magician of Self, my request is that people do their own self-generative work. In Joe's work, he repeats the same thing ad nauseam because he knows the brain's not going to take it in. So that as a facilitator, when I watch that, because I don't like to interfere with people's own self-generativity. I've always said I'm not the answer, I'm a resource, and for others to source themselves. And so what I started in our work is just a simple thing is I had people pair up and read something to each other because I was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. So as a facilitator, that was really cool too. Um, and it shortens the longevity of what Deb was talking about. We have a cognition problem. We can't think something yet. We can't think inside of a whole system response. We can't think quantum as a quantum being. There's a lot we can't think. But just because you can't think it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So the creation templates came to me years ago because during this time we need that thinking. And I was amazed because obviously I sourced them. But I was writing the basic template one in a section we have for where those of us that are doing Joe's work and any other people that want to go into that section in Tapatalk and read it, our message board, our temple, where we're in the direct link with the electromagnetic field. And I was stunned. I was stunned because I've done these since they were created in the early 2000s. And I was in a simple craving at a level of consciousness that I had never experienced before. And as language came to me, not as I found language, but as language came to me, I realized that I was in a phenomenon that was, we were all up leveling. And in this piece of work, I was channeled in 1994 about this time called The Matrix of Reality. I'll see if I can post it on our YouTube channel. It said very clearly that that the consciousness of ourselves being source-based beings will be in total. No one will be left out, which is obvious in a whole system response. I mean, that's obvious. It's just also unbelievable. So that it isn't, we have a linear way of thinking, like if we keep going this way, we'll get to our destination that already exists. But as quantum beings, it's who we be has us be where we already exist. And so Deb, will you share the part about noticing that Joe and I kind of like, we're not the only ones. And Liz, you shared
Right.
Rivers of Fire, because that was really good. And early on, we were talking about this. So you can kind of hear it from their view.
Yeah. This is one of those things. I just happened to do one thing, which led to this, to this, to this, to this, that I'm going to share. So I've been part of as a clinician, a therapist, a psychologist. I've been, obviously, I use tools like the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and we're in version 5 right now. And there's pros and cons to that in the mainstream system. We won't go into that now. And there are several important things about the rewrite of that system. Sorry, I can't get my phone to stop ringing. In 2013, so the templates came through Tantra in 2004. In 2014, she started this, what was it called? Spirals of Being, to begin activating, to make it short, let's call it whole system response and conscious cognitive capacity. In 2013, the DSM-5 came out, and there was one small section.
Say what that is, Deb. We don't know.
The Diagnostic Statistical Manual number 5, where if you're in mainstream psychology, that's where you get your diagnoses from and so forth. It has all the criteria, blah, blah, blah. And so there, for the first time ever, there's a small section entitled Spiritual and Religious Problems. When it came out, I was disgusted and didn't bother to read it, which was a little stupid, or reactive, let's call it. But what it meant was that for the first time ever, psychiatry was acknowledging that people could have spiritual events that were not necessarily disorders. You could have, yeah, that's a good short version. And the woman who runs the IMHU, what does that stand for? Institute of Mental Health University or something like that. That's not right. But Emma Bragdon, who was part of the whole spiritual emergence and emergency movement for decades to just make that become part of the fabric. So she sent out the fabric of light. She sent out an email yesterday publishing a nice article reminding us of that. And I just thought, wait a minute, that's right, when Tantra did the spirals of being. Then Joe's book, Becoming Supernatural, obviously he's written several, but this one is like the book that is the summary of a lot of the material in the courses the course we're going to do. It was published in 2017, which means it was being written well before that. And I just was flabbergasted. And what were the other things? There were a couple of other things. Oh yeah, What the Bleep, that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? That's what was made at the time that the templates were coming through you, Tantra. That's what it was. And I just was flabbergasted. This is just two coinciding domains. And there are others of how necessary the powers that be think these components of awakening are for humanity, because it was coming through these different domains all in roughly the same time period. And that's actually been going on for a while, and there's lots more of those kinds of synchronicities. But wow, how important our awakening and cognitive capacity must be, which also reflects how flattened or redacted it's been. But can you imagine? And I think that's about as far as I can go. I'm still like kind of gobsmacked about it.
I, y- I'm 78 this year, or yeah, this year. And I was around before the word consultant or transformation was part of our cultural norm. So I love that Deb discovered this in time, not in time, but in time, because we can get up on top of that. We can line up with that. Just like people once lined up with therapy, and people lined up with transformation, and people lined up with consulting and coaching. We can line up with awakening. We can line up with, there's now sufficient evidence. And frankly, the number of people that have remission, have healings in Joe's work, it is an indicator also of the promise of the Christ. And it is an indicator that the human system now seeks its wholeness and has access to it, which it didn't have access to when I was born. And it just now has access. The one thing I dislike about human beings listening to people that are leaders like myself is they listen like we have the answer. No, we've just been at work trying to stay with the program so that we are up front and center is every recursion of what's next for humanity is occurring, and we can throw our weight on that. But now human beings are throwing their weight on that. You have to understand, in June of this year, I did 55 prophetics. It was not sourced by me. Every year I do prophetics in January. It was the collective humanity that asked me to do prophetics in June. That means there's a collective awakening.
Let's get real. They beat your door down and demanded it.
Yeah, they did. They demanded it. Because when the collective begins to awaken, we've never lived there. we've never lived in a collective awakening in this flesh, in this particular flesh, but it's damn sure the memories inside us. And I'm in a business course that I'm really struggling with because it's about using pain from pain to gain. I can't do it. I can't do it. And so I was looking, but I'm staying in the course very similar to how Deb stayed in. Of course, she did, because I can go, I don't think that's now. I don't think that's what's happening now. And it gives me the not that can give me the possibility of then what. But we're all in that. We're in not that, but we don't have, as Deb said, the cognition yet. Our cognition does not have language. That's why we pressure people to do the creation templates, because the creation templates get your language out of your mouth, literally gets it out of your head. The cohesive, coherent, congruent language within you that gives you a way to hold a new paradigm of awakening that humanity is presently in. It's an amazing moment, and it's rough. The five of us are not having an easy time. And we're not having an easy time with ourselves. I do have, how much time do we have? I will share this story. I shared this with Deb yesterday. So let me give you an example. So I wake up yesterday morning and I'm fogged again. I mean, I feel like I'm in mothballs most of the time right now. Really, I honestly feel like I'm not only inside this thing, I mean, like the whole world I'm moving in is mothballed. And then I feel emotionally flat. And then I'll have something happen, like what happened for Deb and the amazing self-care they're providing her. Shocking that they're providing her so that she can go and heal. And then I just burst out crying and sobbing, and I'm elated and I'm in ecstasy and I can hardly stand myself. And then back to the fog, back to the dead zone, back to no emotions. So I was having this thought. I woke up and I went, I have no emotions. And so he says, invent an emotion. I went, well, I'm just flatlined. And then this thought came, I have the kitchen to clean. And I thought, I really love to clean my kitchen. And then the next thought was, oh, and this is what Joe talks about. Oh, I have to have the feeling. I have to have the feeling of excitement about doing my kitchen. And I was in a paradox, because I love to clean my kitchen and I didn't have the feeling of loving to feel my kitchen. And then my insight was, oh my God, Joe says, just keep repeating the feeling that gives you access to something, which is fascinating. I'm in a discovery process about that. And I went, oh, so I can go clean my kitchen as if I'm happy, excited cleaning my kitchen, because I know I am excited about I am that. I am excited about my cleaning my kitchen, but my physical body doesn't know how to get the information. It was such a classic example of the work we're doing with Joe. And so I called Deb and I said, but here's my other one. But nobody laughs. So you all just laugh like you think it's funny. Okay. But here's the next one. So since I had my heart event, it's put me and I'm off everything, caffeine, sugar. I mean, I'm way off. And for years I used caffeine. Well, except chai. For years I used sugar and caffeine to keep me going. I mean, for years. So I was thinking to myself, this is my second thing yesterday. I thought, I am biologically flatlined. I'm just biologically flatlined. And this voice came in my head and it said, biologically. And I was like, yes, like that was different than other people. And he said, so cancer is not biological? I went, oh my God. I'm having a biological event, like people who have cancer and people who I am actually having. That's why I'm going. Oh, that's actually why I'm going. But then Deb and I were talking about it. And I got the thread of the last few years for me, because when I got COVID, I got post-COVID, and I just settled in that I was going to have to reinvent myself, that it had ripped something out of me that I wanted back. And in this case, being ready to die for me. That I never had an issue with death up until I had COVID, and it wrecked my path. It just wrecked my path. So everything has been about reinventing myself biologically. And then I had that heart thing that many of you know about. And then it got repaired. And I said to Deb, oh my God, I'm at the original cause. I'm at the feeling that had me make up a whole life of, like I used to say, didn't I, Deb, all the time, I don't care if I'm happy. Because emotions just didn't get the job done for me. Just being emotional just did not get the job done for me. And when I came out of the heart event, Jesus Louise, I've never been more emotional in my whole life. I'm emotional over it. My daughter just about died because I grabbed her outside of Walgreens and hugged her and kissed her. She's 42. Kissed her temple and wiped her face, and I'm sobbing, and she's going, Mom, really not in public, just not in public, Mom. but but it's coming from my biology. The point is, it's coming from my new biology, but I don't know who she is. I don't know who she is. And but that's the baseline. And I remember it. I remember it. I knew my mother was very violent verbally and physically, and very violent emotionally. And I knew that if I felt, I'd be destroyed. I absolutely knew that if I had an emotion, I would be destroyed. I only had one emotion, and it was anger. That was the only one I had because I had to protect myself. And 20 years later, a psychiatrist, psychologist said to my brother, well, maybe she didn't hate, maybe she was angry so she could survive. And my mother had told my brother a story that kept him away from me for 20 years. So there's no accident that he's hosting at least part of our time there. None of this is an accident. This is a whole system response. And in the field of Tantra Mat, the work we do is to have the strength, stamina, capacity for our own healing, because it takes strength, stamina, capacity to do that. It just does. And we're all in the midst of it. Go ahead, Deb.
Liz, did you have something before I start going?
Well, I just for my own, I can throw in my own example. Yeah, I hosted my kids last night. I hadn't seen them in a long time. And I can't tell you how this is working with them, but I know it is. Just the fact that we were able to get together, number one, and gather together was part of this work. I know it. And then two, seeing a new set of children that I'm still now today grappling with, oh, who are they now? Kind of like what you were saying, Tantra, about your daughter. There's that, but the one of the big pieces is, you were talking about how he changes. He's Joe's getting us to change the way we're thinking, and being. And I've come off of a year-long process of healing from a leg injury. So I tore my hamstring a year ago, and it's still healing. And from sitting with the meditations thus far and the coursework, I'm noticing, I'm preparing myself physically to be in this work also, that I'm thinking I'm walking differently now.
Mm.
That and because part of what you do is you see yourself as whole, that's part of it. And so I'm noticing when I'm out walking, when I'm either walking or swimming every day, um, that's shifted now. So, um, it's very, very powerful. Um, I'm feeling like I'm 10 years at least younger when I'm walking now and not shuffling along like like I was feeling like an old lady. So that's, it's just very powerful. So I just wanted to presence that as another example of how this work, how being in the work is shifting who we are in ourselves, and the confidence too. I was very tentative. I've been very tentative uh, because I still have the body memory of the injury. And so, when you're walking off a curb or, you're looking at your whole surrounding, protecting your leg, that's how significant the injury was. And I'm not doing that now. So it's just fascinating. That's within the last week. It's very powerful work. So I just wanted to presence it. Go ahead,
Also,
Deb.
the whole gig is we have to really have compassion that we don't know ourselves whole. We don't know
Yeah.
that identity. And just a simple thing like I have a heart that works. And just that simple thing in the surface level thinking is like, okay, well, now you can get back to work and you can go survive. But it's more than that now. It's, wow, I'm being introduced to a way of existing I didn't even know was possible. So it hits deep, it hits pay dirt really deep now, which is
Mhm.
fascinating to me. And it's beautiful. Deb?
Yeah.
May I use your example, Liz? So
Sure.
she had a leg injury that attending to that led to some adaptations in her life, which led to her feeling old in at least moments. That could be called a personality trait. If it kept going, like for me, it was 3 years ago, I think, that I started to have my health started collapsing. Lots of reasons why, all of that. And I knew I'd been yanked out of some circumstances that I didn't belong in, but I was going along because I was born into a system that said this is the way you do life. And so I'm switching back and forth between Liz and I. So in adapting to all of that, what Liz just described was personality traits rising. Now, it's only a year, so it's on short term, but that happens to all of us across a lifetime and across even way beyond our lifetime. And the term is epigenetic threads. It's an epigenetic formulation. Now, epigenetics can be something bad, like a trauma or her leg injury. And the response to that, the emotions and the response to that results in a combination of personality and life choices and adaptations. And we call it, oh, that's just life. But it isn't necessarily. And epigenetics can also be something very life enhancing that has the same thing.
I
So,
think I think that's what we're doing, like in my work and other work and Joe's work,
yes,
we're establishing new epigenetic threads.
exactly. Absolutely. So, epigenetics is a phenomenon of existence, I assert, and we're being shown, we're being shown or having that get illuminated and then shown to work it, how to work it. and and I've been able to really feel that. Oh, I see we're 2 minutes. Okay. The, especially since I started getting my health started collapsing and then I left the place I was working, got fired. But that was, I knew creation had pulled me out of. I kept saying it's like being yanked out of a lane of traffic I didn't belong in. But it still rattled all kinds of, had a whole ripple effect through a lot of things. And I can feel these threads that have made up my life even if I'm sitting here observing, knowing that's not really the truth of my existence, but I have had no power. Well, up to a certain point, because using the creation exercises has been massive. But there was still just this little bit, well, a big bit, but I don't know how to say that well. And to get to be shown how to shift that from life defeating epigenetics to life enhancing is just, there's a huge amount of power there. And it's tricky. It's tricky, really tricky, and not necessarily comfortable.
Why we build the strength, stamina, capacity for it.
Mhm.
I think humanity has been lulled into thinking there's an end goal waiting for them when it's sitting inside of them. And the whole point is to build the strength, stamina, capacity to have it rise within us in the vital psyche and awakening your being and in nurturing transformation.